Hello ladies and gentlemen, it has been a while. I haven't seen you since last year. My, you've grown. Today we're going to be taking a look at the December 2015 Humble Monthly Bundle, and I realize that we're a little bit behind. We're almost in February. We're just now getting to December. Life has thrown me some curveballs. It's thrown my family some curveballs. I've been kind of behind the curve, but I didn't want to skip it. I wanted to maintain posterity. I wanted to maintain consistency, so I'm going to be trying to catch up by February. So right now we're going to be taking a look at the December bundle, and the goal for this video is to answer the question of, is it worth purchasing the Humble Monthly Bundle? Is my $12 a month, are the games that come in the bundle worth the $12 that I give them? Because that's what I would want to know when buying a product of anonymous video games, because those are kind of hit and miss, you know? So we're going to be taking a look at all the video games in the Humble Monthly Bundle for December 2015. For those of you who don't know what the Humble Monthly Bundle is, it's by the people who do the regular Humble Bundles, which they collect a bunch of games, they give it to you for a really low price. You can pay more, you can pay less. I guess they don't really set the price. They let you set the price, which is really freaking awesome. And you even get to decide how much of that goes to the charity that they're donating it to, how much of that goes to the developers of the games, and how much of that goes to the Humble Bundle itself. They also have a store where 10% of what you pay goes to the charity that they have listed. And then they also have the Humble Monthly Bundle, which is what I take a look at. And that is, it's like a subscription service that you pay $12 a month and they give you 6 games. And maybe some extra stuff thrown in like DLC or some other stuff, as you're going to see in this episode, which I'm really hyped for. 10% of the Humble Monthly proceeds go to a charity. And the charity for this month was Charity Water, which is a non-profit organization that works to bring clean and safe drinking water to people in developing nations. So even if you don't like what you see in the bundle, maybe you could consider visiting the website for the charity and taking a look around there, and maybe consider donating some money towards that cause, because honestly 10% of $12 isn't a whole lot. So if you're not buying the bundle, like, you could spend half of what you spend on the bundle and give it to the charity, and then they got even more money than if you had bought the bundle. So consider that separately from the bundle. It's a good cause. I think everybody deserves clean water, so you might just take a look and see if you can find it within your wallet to donate, and that'd be cool. I also have to mention, I don't know if this is something that I have to mention, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it just in case for potential future things. I'm not being sponsored by the Humble Bundle to review these. I am just reviewing them as a person who buys them, and a person who would have questions similar to the people who would potentially watch these videos, like, am I getting my money's worth? That's simply what I seek to answer. So I'm going to review it based on its gameplay and within the context of the bundle, whether or not each of the games is valuable, whether it's a good deal or not. And then at the end, we're going to take a look at the bundle as a whole, and that's going to be that. Also, after the review, I'm going to be announcing the winner of the giveaway for November 2015 bundle, and I'm going to be setting up the rules for the future bundles that are coming up. So be sure to watch for that if you want free stuff, because I'm going to be giving away games that I already owned, plus a few extra games, so it's not just like, I already have these games, you can just have my hand-me-downs. I want you to feel like you're actually winning something, you get some kind of control over what you win as the winner. So that's what we're going to be doing here in a few seconds, so let's just get right to it then. The first title we're taking a look at today is Towerfall Ascension, the game with a name that makes no sense. How can you fall and ascend, Oh, well, I guess technically. Towerfall Ascension is most widely appreciated for being a multiplayer arena with combat that centers around platforming and positioning, and with 120 unique maps to drag your friends to and 75 ways to customize your matches, I'm sure it must be a blast. Unfortunately, I fly solo for my reviews, so we'll be examining the game from the perspective of a single player, which means we're primarily looking at experiences from the 1 to 2 player campaign. Let's open with a broad statement. The game is fun, the level design is superb, and the developers give a great deal of variety both in the aesthetics of every level as well as the layout and how you interact with the world. On some maps, for example, standing in a certain place for too long will result in your death, while on others you have the ability to destroy walls that tactically redefine your mobility options. The terrain transforms over the course of each level's wave-based progression. Sometimes it will introduce new level elements, others it'll dim the lights and make moving around even more dangerous than it already was. This does well to emphasize the think on your feet tactics you'll have to utilize to survive long enough to finish every match. The player operates on a life-based system with every hit from an enemy unless you've collected a shield power-up, resulting in a death. And of course, the enemies come at you in droves, each type having a unique attack and movement style, so you'll want to be moving and paying attention to their positions and behavior before you execute a plan of attack. It's easy to lose track of enemies at times, and even easier to forget how the level has been modified. Sometimes you might even stray into the sights of a ranged enemy without noticing until it's too late. That sucks. Mechanically, the controls make you feel like a badass no matter what your level of play. The way your character interacts with the environment creates a certain level of fluidity and a sense of power. Even when you've fired off all of your arrows, knowing that you're smarter than the enemy is all you need to keep your cool, quickly plot a course around danger, and retrieve your ammunition. It also has a system that is simple to pick up and play with, but has a high enough skill cap with plenty of room for tactics and mastery. Not that I would ever have that. Jump canceling? You mean deciding not to jump. That's standing still! The most important control, of course, is the one that lets you pick up your hat after you've been murdered so you can pretend it never happened. Still, too many mistakes and you'll find yourself with only one life left and a couple of rounds to go. If you manage to pull it off, it's really rewarding, but until you do, you'll feel like a proctologist performing his own surgery. Just a little more. Don't touch the walls. Gently, gently. The only gripe that I have as a gamer is that there's no online multiplayer. It's strictly local, but the human being in me would be amiss if I weren't to also mention that it was a decision made intentionally by the developer for technical reasons. Namely, at 80 millisecond ping, arrows would have misleading hitboxes with up to 1000% their intended size. That's not fun in a competitive setting. A one-hit kill projectile that's 10 times bigger than it's supposed to be? That's one hell of an error row. No? Damn. Personally, I'd be willing to pay around $8 for this game, but honestly, that might be a little stingy on my part. But that's okay, because the store price is typically $14.99, which feels a little much, so we're even. If you manage to catch it on a Steam sale, the lowest it's been is $3.47, which is, without a doubt, worth it. The amount of fun I had with this title nets it a perfect 10 out of 10 in terms of gameplay, and I give it an 8 out of 10 in value. The next game we're covering is Rust, and I felt there was no better way to review this game than with a heartfelt ballad that I wrote myself. I really hope that you're capable of interpreting my creative genius for this one, because it's pretty, you ready? Fuck this fucking game! Fuck this stupid fucking game! No more. In case you couldn't tell, I had a horrendous time with this game. I disliked it so much that I almost canceled the December bundle review after accidentally deleting all the footage because I was really reluctant to get footage for it again. And that's not just because it's poorly optimized and difficult to set up a recording for, it's because I absolutely do not understand what people think is fun about it unless dicking around with friends and doing stupid shit like getting hordes of bears to chase you while blasting music over your open mic is the point. So let's tackle my first point. The game is poorly optimized. It's constantly stuttering, glitching out, or otherwise crashing for no apparent reason, and while it's not a valid complaint for someone who only plays games, I can't seem to record it without some stroke of luck. You can't capture it as a game, you can't capture it as a window. It's the only game I've ever recorded that's dropped frames on low settings, and I don't understand why. Next point. The game is unfun if you don't enjoy the current state of the US economy as perceived by the oppressed and impoverished. You want to know the struggle of an urban child growing up in the ghetto? Play Rust. You spawn in the middle of a city where all of the space is already taken by the people who got there before you, so building's out of the question. Resources are incredibly scarce because of aforementioned population apparently soaking it all up, especially the ones you need most. Everything's trying to kill you. Everyone who has all of the resources will retain all of the resources because you're far less likely to fire off a lucky shot from a bow than they are to empty a few rounds into your torso. The 1% will patronize you with the horribly misguided notion that you can succeed if only you try hard enough, but it's physically impossible without spending enough hours dying to some asshat named Texas Tibbers to get lucky. The only way to succeed seems to be joining a gang and stealing from those who are better off than you. You need trees and rocks to gather wood and stone respectively. Both are needed to build a home, a campfire to protect you from the elements, a spear or bow and arrows with which to hunt, tools to gather resources once your new Brock breaks. There are none of those for Miles because other players also need those and they were there first. They've locked down the area with houses and tool sheds. You're going to have to do some walking, but are more likely to die from hunger than find anything. But let's say you do find some of the scarce resources littered around. You mine some rocks, still not enough to build anything with, but hey, it's better than nothing. You wander into a bush, thinking it might constitute as a tree. Incorrect. Also, some asshole put a spike wall in there. You're now dead. Respawn with nothing and repeat the process. Fun. Alright, I've been pretty mean. Let's get to the good parts about Rust, huh? I think I have my list here. Okay. 1. The graphics are pretty. 2. You can see flaccid dicks if you're into that kind of thing. 3. That's it. Keep in mind that this review was written from the perspective of a single player, but also remember that that's who's buying these bundles, single players. It's got some interesting ideas, but none of them are realistically accessible if you're on your own, without sacrificing your soul to the gods of luck. I would not buy Rust, but if I had to give it a price, I'd say I'd expect a reasonable price in terms of content and quality would be $20. And it's $19.99 normally, so that's acceptable if you're a masochist who also hates their life. If you see it on sale, its lowest price was $9.99, but even then I'd personally avoid the headache. I'm going to be generous with the final score here because I'm conscious enough to realize that it has more enjoyable qualities if you're willing to dive into a septic tank without a scuba mask, and I'm just not about that life, so I'm going to go with a 4 out of 10 instead of the 1 that I want to brand it with. Value-wise, I'd say 5 out of 10. Whew, thank goodness we made it through that. Now onto something a little more interesting, the short, minimalist stealth adventure Neonstruct. It's worth mentioning that Humble Bundle has given us the special edition that comes with the art book and soundtrack, but that's not what we're going to be looking at specifically. This is one of a couple of games that actually benefited from the loss of my footage. The first time I played it, I didn't enjoy it at all. I focused too closely on collecting the 5 optional geocaches throughout the levels and getting a perfect score, which is not an experience that I recommend. While the game is not without its flaws, playing through a second time without forcing myself to play a certain way was considerably more enjoyable, especially when using a controller, which I do recommend. The premise of the story is that you are Jillian Cleary, an ex-spy wanted for treason with a hefty mission of clearing her name. Also, she doesn't like being called darling by the head of her organization. I can only assume that, combined with having a progressive sounding name like Jillian and her literally neon pink hair, that she is a radical feminist trying to usurp the patriarchy. The story is the backdrop for the game mechanics, which are, as you might have guessed, very similar to most other stealth games streamlined down to a simplicity benefiting of its minimalistic graphics. In some ways, this is disappointing. There's a lot of room for depth, but they never seem to take it. You can interact with the environment, for instance, but no one notices the flickering lights or the flushing of toilets. Instead, your stealth is entirely defined by the amount of light you're in, which, even then, you can abuse pretty freely, and whether you're sneaking, walking, or running. You have access to a few neat items, like the hacking device that can hack all doors that are required by law to be hackable via Brick Baker minigame, except for the conveniently placed doors around the facility that tells you this and gives you the device, I guess. You also have anti-light grenades that create pockets of darkness to help you make your getaway, which are pretty neat and completely fit in with the atmosphere of the game. It's even got a system that lets you knock out the guards and hide their bodies, but it punishes you for that. And that's something that I really feel is one of the areas that is lacking, the scoring system. It grades you based on your ability to not be seen, not set off alarms, collect geocaches, complete the mission, and not knock out any guards, which really gets in the way of the geocache collecting and the being seen thing. Sure, it's more realistic that people would notice that a spy's been hanging around if everyone mysteriously got knocked out, but the guards don't notice when doors strangely open for no reason, so where is it that we're drawing the realism line here? Another problem that I have is that you move really slowly. Except when going down the stairs for some reason, because everyone knows that's the best time to break out into a sprint. I guess that's normal for a stealth game, but when you're spending 90% of the time crouching to avoid detection, I'd like to move at least slightly faster than if I sat on my ass and used the vibrations of my own farts to propel me forward, yeah? Then there's the level design. It's obnoxiously dark. I get it. I stick to the shadows, the environment contrasts with its neon in the darkness, but can I not get an ambient glow that I can turn on when I'm safe? Do I have to be in pitch blackness all the time? I like the neon elements like the trees that give off light, but I'm not sure that I like the blocky voxel feel that makes up most of the levels. I do think, however, that on the whole the levels are interesting and varied with a touch of realism in how you interact with your environment, but again the interest is undermined by poor execution. Neonstruct is a game that I think is worth about $8. It's too short to be worth any more than that. For the purposes of what's included in the bundle, the price is normally $24.99, which is totally outrageous even with the book and soundtrack, though I have to say the 80s style synth pop is pretty fantastic. If you're looking for just the game, you can find it for $17.99 normally, or for as low as $13.74/$9.89 respectively. Gameplay for Neonstruct gets a 7.5 out of 10, while value earns a 6 out of 10. Up next, we have the most mellow of all the titles on the list, Banished. The game that lets you take control over a collection of people who have grouped together after being cast out of their homes and decided that they were going to make a newer, cooler club that the other kids weren't allowed into. Still no word on why they were cast out in the first place. When I ask, they give me shifty looks, and it doesn't say in their character information panel, so I can only assume it's an excuse for a plot in a city building simulator. That is, by the way, essentially all this is. There's nothing flashy about it, there's no explanation of why, other than that they're presumably hardcore criminals who did numerous nasty things to the people living with them. All you do is manage your resources, assign your villagers, and try to do it in a way such that people don't die. Which is, surprisingly, a lot harder than I thought it would be. While simulators like this aren't typically my cup of tea, I found it to be relatively pleasant. You just have to be sure to manage your time wisely, because if you keep it on fast forward too long, you risk everything going into chaos in the future. The only complaint that I have with this title is that the tutorial wasn't as in-depth as I would have liked in some areas, and in other areas it went too far in-depth where I would have liked a little less detail. That's your typical tutorial complaint. But other than that, there only appears to be one goal in the game, which is to survive. I guess you can take on the challenge of trying to make your city as big as possible, or maybe as efficient as possible so it's incredibly small but self-sustaining, or maybe you just want it to look as nice as possible so you handpick every house designed individually instead of plunking them down all willy-nilly. Not much else really needs to be said. I'd be willing to drop around $10, but that's only because I don't play sandbox simulators. $19.99 is what it normally costs on the store, which is steep for me, but not unrealistically so. If you're feeling particularly stingy, you might be able to catch it out for $4.99 when it's on Steam sale. That's the lowest price it's ever been. It's a fantastic game for what it sets out to be, and while it doesn't fall into the genres that I typically find interesting, if you're into this sort of game, you're going to enjoy it. And for that reason, I give it an 8 out of 10 in gameplay with an 8 out of 10 in value. Barreling on, the next title we're rifling through is Company of Heroes 2, a game that is misleadingly about managing the assets of neither Wayne Tech nor Queen Industries. Perhaps even more disappointing is that it's not even an Avengers-themed dating simulator. Maybe one day, Holku-chan. Instead, you'll find yourself answering the call of duty on the battlefield for this one, in the company of real heroes like this guy.
By orders of Comrade Stalin, all who retreat are traitors to the motherland! Turn back and fight, damn you! Fire!
Okay, maybe not that guy. Company of Heroes 2 is a relatively well-received military real-time strategy. It has online elements as well as a couple of single-player campaigns, which is what we'll be focusing on. The bundle includes the British Forces and Western Front Armies DLC, but due to time constraints, we'll be focusing on experiences from the main story. In the campaign, you take charge of various squads of unknown soldiers, conveniently grouped together based on their specialization. As you may have guessed, each specialization comes with its own strengths, weaknesses, abilities, and upgrades. Engineers, for instance, can be outfitted with flamethrowers, and conscripts can combine with and bolster damaged units. Progress takes place in the form of narrative-driven missions, sandwiched between admittedly interesting and well-paced out scenes. The missions are pretty straightforward, and you mostly just complete a list of objectives as they become relevant. Though they do have a few optional secondary conditions like keeping specific units alive or aiding in the protection of civilians. You start each mission with a predetermined set of soldiers, but can summon more should they meet an unfortunate demise. Conscripts can be summoned at any time, while specialized units need to be radioed in from a base. You're incentivized to keep your units around, however, because they become stronger and more capable as they gain experience and level up. Unfortunately, my interest in the game tanks because of the complicated control schemes they have in place. The scope of things that each unit can do is far too much for me to keep in mind at any given moment. That's not even mentioning how awkward the pathing can be from time to time. The movement flat out makes me recoil. I'm honestly still not even sure how the cover system works, but I think it's fully automatic. Of course, complexity just kind of comes with the territory of the genre, so I'm not going to punish it for that. I can see why it gets the praise that it does, it just happens to be outside my range of interest. You might say it clips the very edge of it. I gave it a shot, but it still wouldn't hold my attention for more than short bursts. I'd be willing to shell out $30 for the whole package, personally, which is only half of what they're asking for at the normal store price of $67.97. Though if you ration your money and set your sights on a sale, you might be able to spot one and snipe the game and DLC for the more acceptable loss of $15.22. Despite the flack I gave it, it comes locked and loaded with a plethora of fun things for you to do, and I'd still say that it deserves an 8 out of 10 in gameplay, and its value is on point with a 9.5 out of 10. Get it? It's a military game. I'm a machine pun. Do you remember the Power Rangers? Do you like isometric real-time strategies involving squad-based combat? Do you like giant robots or pop culture references? If you said yes to any of these things, then you would probably love our next title, Chroma Squad. Chroma Squad is exactly the game that I just described, and it is fantastic. It's an indie title that was successfully funded on Kickstarter, and you can see the love that was poured into it. It's unbelievably charming with its lighthearted humor, its pixelated graphics, and simplistic gameplay style, though there is a bit more depth if you're looking for it. You take on the role of a manager presiding over a group of teenage actors who left their jobs as serfs under a douche lord in order to produce their own television show. As manager, you direct how you want the action to take part on the screen in the form of turn-based combat, complete with special abilities, a flashy finishing move, and teamwork-powered attacks and mobility. In your downtime, you get to answer emails and upgrade your studio and props for each character. The story takes place over the course of seasons and chapters, which you can think of as acts and scenes respectively. The enemies are all colorful and full of life, they've got their own tactics, and are full of personality. It's just a really fun game to play with fun environments to explore and a great variety of places and things to see. My favorite thing about it is how much customizability you have over your characters. You can really capture the likeness of your friends if you'd like. Yeah. That looks about right. You can even customize what your giant mech looks like in order to fight the giant enemies you've got. The objective is to gain fans, which affects how much money you get after each episode you air. Then you pour that money into funding your craft. There are, of course, some weak patches in the game, like the fact that giant battles are a little underwhelming, or the fact that it can be a little repetitive from time to time. It's more of a game you play between other things that are going on in life than one that you sit down and play for hours on end, unless you're invested in figuring out what's going to happen next. I'm also not sure I like how backers were given characters in-game. While I do think it adds to the handmade feel, it still comes off as forced sometimes and breaks the immersion. I do, however, enjoy how they rewarded some backers with social media comments about how much they liked your show at the end. It gives it a little bit of extra depth. I'd say the game is worth $10, but due to lack of variance in gameplay and general brevity, it's not something I'd be willing to put much more into, which is unfortunate as it normally costs $14.99. My advice would be to watch for the Steam sale and try to grab it for $8.99 or lower if it happens to drop that low. The mechanics are solid and fun for a charming title like this one, and I would say it earns itself a 9.5 out of 10 in gameplay. It's a wonderful addition to the bundle, so it nets itself a 10 out of 10 in value. So overall, we've got about a 7.75 out of 10 in gameplay, with 4 of the 6 titles being above that average, and a 7.75 out of 10 in value, again with 4 out of 6 titles being above that average. That brings us to about a 7.75 out of 10 total for the bundle, and that's about a C if you're thinking about it in terms of grade, which I feel is about right. It's about average in terms of a bundle. It's not super great, it's not super awful, but in comparison to the previous bundle, it's a little bit disappointing. But this is only if you take into account the main games of the bundle. There is one more thing that they added that I am going to raise the bundle's score by 1.4. And if you don't care, not 1.4, but because of this, I'm going to raise it by 1 point. I hope that's clear enough. Anyway, what that thing is they have included a pre-alpha demo for Frozen Byte's upcoming... What that thing is they have included a pre-alpha demo for Frozen Byte's upcoming stealth-based adventure game, Shadwin. And that was a pretty cool thing of them to do. That's a really interesting thing to include in a bundle, in my opinion. It's not a full game, but it's an early look at something that a lot of people haven't had the chance to get an early look at. It's like an exclusive for the bundle, and that to me is a very rewarding experience to have in a bundle centered around video games. The first look at games that no one else potentially even knows exists. That's fantastic. I did a first look video of it where I played through the demo. I'm going to go ahead and link that into this video. I didn't want to include it in the video because, as you can imagine, that would have been a tremendously long video. It's about 20 minutes. If you want to take a look at that, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But know that that's why I'm going to raise the point. I'm going to raise the score by exactly 1 point because I feel like it deserves it for that. And that'll raise it from a C to a B. And I feel like with the inclusion of that pre-alpha demo, I feel like they did good on us there. So even though the bundle itself was a little underwhelming, they included something that kind of made up for it in my eyes. And, you know, that's pretty cool. So there's that. So it is time to pick the winner of the November bundle giveaway. And we're going to be doing this by clicking that go button, and it will randomly select somebody on this list of people who have commented. The winner will be contacted with the video games that I said they would win in the November bundle. And this isn't how it's going to work for the future bundles because I've already set up a list of rules that I think would make it a little more interesting. I wanted a system that kind of favors the people who have subscribed and remain subscribed and support me while not excluding people who don't want to subscribe. I don't want to punish them by not allowing them to play and thus inflating my subscriber rate by people who don't actually care about my content. So it's kind of a way to thank them for supporting me but not pushing everyone else away from these contests, basically. So be sure to check the rules for that. It's going to be like a little bit of a game where I spin it 10 times instead of just one, and depending on when they subscribed or how long they subscribed, they lower the number of the counter faster than people who aren't subscribed. It doesn't take away your chance of winning. It just favors people who have supported me, if you understand what I mean. That's kind of how I want the system to work. So be sure to check the rules. It'll explain it a little bit better than I have. And let's get to picking who has won the November bundle. Of course, it's got my name here because I've commented down there as well. But if it picks me, I'm going to respin, of course. So let's see who has won. Fuck you. Okay, so I can't in good consciousness give these games to Feargen, not on my very first giveaway, and it's not because I don't like Feargen. In fact, he's like one of my friends, and that's why I can't do it. I can't have this look like I've rigged the contest. It's not. So let's see, who has won? Let's try this one more time. Like, he was in the video for cry. I put him in the fucking... Stop! What fucking... There you have it. I win the bundle. Fucking shit. Maybe it is biased. Maybe I was wrong to think that it could be anything other than the people in my fucking friends list. Come on now, give me someone random. Cool Coat Gaming. Okay, bud. Congratulations. You have won the November contest. I'm sorry it took so long. Cool Coat Gaming, you have won the November bundle. Congratulations. I'll reply to your comments so you know specifically, just in case you unsubscribed and lost faith in the fact that it was coming. We will get you those codes. We will get you the games. I hope you enjoy them sincerely. Thank you for being a subscriber, or thank you for at least commenting on my video. I appreciate whatever feedback you gave me. That sounds kind of insincere. I just can't remember what feedback you gave me. It's been so long since I made the video, man. I'm sorry. But thank you for watching the video and commenting like I asked you to, and I hope that you enjoy the games, man, because I enjoyed them, so So they'll be coming your way. And again, be sure to check out the description below for instructions on how to win the December bundles titles. The games that I'm going to be giving away this month are Rust, and that's the only game that I already had, but I'm not going to just let it rest at that. The winner will also, of course, get the one game of their choosing, and I'm going to throw in another game just so it's not like a very I don't want it to be unimpressive, so I'm going to give them my personal favorite game from the bundle, which was Chroma Squad. So you're going to be getting Rust, whatever game you choose, and Chroma Squad. So if Chroma Squad is the game that you were going to choose, hot damn, you just got yourself a third game. So there you go. You got 3 games, Rust, Chroma Squad, and whatever you want. Thank you guys so much for watching. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed the video. If so, consider sharing it with a friend or two so that they can get in on this hot giveaway action. But I mean, if you didn't like it, don't share it, because then your friends will probably laugh at me and it'd make me sad. Our next review is going to be taking a look at the January bundle, which includes Payday 2. If you want to know my opinion on that, be sure to tune in. Until then, remember that failure is not the worst case scenario, so glow on with your bad selves, and I'll see you in the next episode. Stay awesome.